The staircase is not just a way to move between levels. It's the most carefully controlled place in the entire silo. And once you realize that, every conversation, every meeting, every chase, and every secret suddenly starts making sense. Because what if the staircase was never designed to connect people? What if it was designed to control them? Everyone believes the real mystery of Silo is outside the walls. Some think it's the poisoned air. Others think it's the hidden vaults, the surveillance systems, or the lies about history. But here's what changes everything. The biggest secret may have been sitting in plain sight since the very first episode. The staircase. Not the cameras. Not the servers. Not the vault. The staircase itself. Look carefully. Whenever something important happens, the story pulls us back to those endless spirals. Characters spend hours climbing them. Messages travel through them. Power flows through them. Fear spreads through them. Deaths happen around them. Hope rises through them. Nothing important in the silo exists without the staircase standing silently beside it. That can't be an accident. And this is where it gets darker. The staircase isn't simply architecture. It behaves like a machine. Not a mechanical machine. A psychological one. Think about how life works inside the silo. Nobody uses elevators. Nobody moves quickly. Every conversation comes with exhaustion. Every decision requires effort. Every journey costs time. That sounds normal because that's all the characters have ever known. But that's exactly why nobody questions it. Look at what the show is actually telling us. Every single floor represents more than distance. It represents social class. Mechanical stays near the bottom. Judicial operates closer to power. IT controls information from above. The higher you go, the more authority you encounter. The lower you descend, the more labor you find. The staircase literally turns hierarchy into physical reality. You don't simply earn respect. You climb toward it. You don't just lose status. You fall away from it. That language isn't accidental. It's built directly into the structure of the silo itself. And that's our first piece of evidence. The staircase transforms political power into physical geography. But that's not the real mystery. The real mystery is why. Why would the founders build a civilization where every movement demands physical effort? Why force thousands of people to spend hours simply traveling? Surely technology advanced enough to build an underground city could have built elevators. That's obvious. Which means their absence must also be intentional. This is the detail everyone missed. Removing elevators doesn't just slow transportation. It slows information. Imagine hearing a rumor on floor 20. By the time someone carries it to floor 120, hours have passed. Stories change. Facts disappear. People forget details. News becomes distorted. Information ages while it's traveling. Suddenly, nobody shares the same version of reality. And that's exactly how control survives. Because dictators don't always erase truth. Sometimes they simply delay it. The staircase guarantees delay. Every message becomes old before it arrives. Every warning comes too late. Every revolution loses momentum while climbing hundreds of flights. Now think about how often characters arrive somewhere completely exhausted. That exhaustion isn't background realism. It's part of the system. People make worse decisions when they're tired. They stop asking difficult questions. They avoid unnecessary travel. Eventually they stay where they belong. Not because someone forces them, because it's easier. That's psychological engineering, not physical imprisonment. The founders didn't need locked doors. They created tired people. And tired people police themselves. That sounds terrifying because it's believable. But here's what changes everything again. Watch who actually travels the staircase the most. It's never ordinary citizens. It's investigators, sheriffs, messengers, engineers, people searching for truth. Juliette spends enormous amounts of time climbing. Every discovery costs her physically before it costs her emotionally. Every answer demands another impossible journey. The staircase becomes a test. Almost like the building itself is asking, how badly do you really want the truth? Notice something else. Whenever Juliette climbs upward, she's entering the world of politics, surveillance, and deception. Whenever she goes downward, She enters the world of machines, honesty, and survival. The direction changes the meaning of the journey. Up isn't simply higher. Down isn't simply lower. They're completely different realities living inside one structure. Almost like two civilizations stacked on top of each other. One controls, one obeys, and standing between them is the staircase. That's not symbolism anymore. That's infrastructure designed around power. Now, ask yourself another dangerous question. If the staircase controls movement, who controls the staircase? Not physically, psychologically. Who benefits from making every journey slow? Who benefits from separating neighbors by hours instead of minutes? Who benefits when entire communities rarely meet? Certainly not the people. Isolation creates misunderstanding. Misunderstanding creates fear. Fear creates dependence. And dependence creates perfect control. That chain begins with one simple architectural decision. No elevators. Only stairs. At first, that seems insignificant. Now it feels impossible to ignore. Because once you stop seeing the staircase as a hallway, you start seeing it as the central nervous system of the entire silo. Every person passes through it. Every secret travels through it. Every lie depends on it. And every rebellion dies inside it. Or does it? Because there is one strange pattern the series quietly keeps repeating. Whenever someone begins getting dangerously close to the truth, their most important moments happen on the stairs. Not inside offices. Not inside apartments. Not inside mechanical. On the staircase itself. And that raises a terrifying possibility. What if the staircase isn't just carrying people? What if it's watching them? What if every climb inside the silo is actually an invisible interrogation? That sounds impossible. Until you stop looking at the staircase as a location and start looking at it as a filter. Because the people who designed the silo never needed to know what everyone was thinking. They only needed to know who was willing to keep climbing. And this is where it gets darker. Most viewers assume the silo's surveillance system is made up of cameras, microphones, hidden servers, and the people working inside IT. But look at what the show is actually telling us. Surveillance is only useful after someone acts. The staircase works before anyone acts. It predicts behavior. Think about it. Every resident has the same choice every day. Stay where you belong, or spend hours climbing towards somewhere you were never expected to visit. That decision alone says everything. A mechanic climbing toward judicial is unusual. An IT employee walking into mechanical attracts attention. A sheriff constantly traveling between levels becomes impossible to ignore. The staircase doesn't just connect departments. It exposes intention. This is the detail everyone missed. The founders built a city where curiosity has a physical cost. The more questions you ask, the more stairs you climb. The more stairs you climb, the more visible you become. Nobody has to accuse you of being suspicious. Your movement already has. And suddenly, the staircase isn't just architecture anymore. It's a behavioral map. Now think about Juliette. She refuses to stay in one place. She keeps moving.
Up, down,
back again. Every climb breaks an invisible rule. Most citizens spend their lives inside familiar levels. They know the same neighbors, the same routines, the same stories. Juliette doesn't. She crosses invisible borders over and over. And every time she does, the people in power react faster than they should. Have you ever wondered why? Sometimes it feels as if Bernard already knows where she's headed. Sometimes Judicial seems prepared before anyone could possibly warn them. At first, it looks like ordinary intelligence gathering. But here's what changes everything. Maybe the staircase itself creates predictable behavior. Imagine you want to hide information. You don't need guards on every floor. You only need to understand how long it takes someone to travel. Once movement becomes predictable, interception becomes easy. Every message follows the same path. Every person follows the same route. Every investigator becomes trapped inside the same spiral. There are no shortcuts. No alternate exits. No hidden escape routes for ordinary citizens. The staircase forces everyone into one controlled stream. That's incredibly efficient. But it's also terrifying. Because a system like that doesn't just monitor people. It shapes them. Now think about something even stranger. Important conversations happen while climbing. Characters lower their voices. They pause between landings. They stop because they're out of breath. Those pauses matter. Exhaustion changes communication. People forget details. They shorten explanations. They abandon difficult topics. Sometimes silence wins simply because speaking requires too much energy. That isn't random realism. That's psychology. The staircase steals clarity one step at a time. And that's exactly how powerful systems survive. Not by defeating every enemy, but by making resistance exhausting. Look at Bernard.
He's calm.
Controlled. Patient. He rarely appears rushed.
Why?
Because the system works for him. He doesn't have to chase information. Information eventually comes to him. Everyone else climbs.
He waits.
That difference is everything. Power inside the silo isn't measured by strength. It's measured by who can remain still while others are forced to move. That's a completely different way of understanding the hierarchy. Mechanical survives through labor. Sheriffs survive through movement. Citizens survive through obedience. But leadership survives through stillness. The staircase creates that imbalance. One group spends energy. The other spends authority. And this is where the theory becomes even more disturbing. What if the staircase wasn't designed to stop escape, but to erase unity? Think about how revolutions happen. People gather. They organize. They exchange ideas quickly. They respond immediately. None of that is easy inside the silo. A protest on one level may not even be known on another until hours later. A warning arrives late. A leader disappears before supporters can reach them. Momentum dies during the climb. That's not coincidence. That's design. The staircase stretches time itself. Distance isn't measured in meters. It's measured in opportunity. Every extra flight means another chance for fear to grow. Another chance for doubt. Another chance for authority to prepare. Look back at the history the silo teaches its citizens. Information is fragmented. History is incomplete. Knowledge exists in isolated pieces. Sound familiar? That's exactly how the staircase divides people. Not just physically, mentally. Each level becomes its own world. Each community develops its own assumptions. Each generation believes their experience is the whole truth. Nobody sees the complete picture because almost nobody sees the entire silo. The staircase doesn't just separate floors. It separates reality. And maybe that's why Juliette is so dangerous. She keeps connecting worlds that were never supposed to meet. Mechanical learns about IT. IT learns about mechanical. Secrets begin crossing levels. Truth starts climbing. That's what terrifies Bernard more than any single discovery. Not one secret. Connection. Because every authoritarian system has one weakness. Once isolated people begin comparing their stories, the official story starts falling apart. And suddenly the staircase becomes something unexpected. Not just the tool that built control, but the only path capable of destroying it. Every step Juliette takes carries more than her body. It carries truth from one world into another. But if that's true, then there's one question that becomes impossible to ignore. If the founders understood that the staircase could eventually unite the silo, why would they ever build it this way in the first place? Unless the staircase was never built for the people living inside the silo. It was built for someone who hasn't revealed themselves yet. That single idea changes the entire story. Because if the staircase wasn't built for the residents, then every generation has been using it without understanding its real purpose. We've been asking the wrong question all along. Instead of asking, why are there only stairs? Maybe we should be asking, who were these stairs originally meant to guide? And this is where it gets darker. The staircase isn't just unusually large. It's impossibly large. Thousands of people use it every day, yet it never feels like an ordinary apartment building or underground bunker. It dominates every shot. It coils through the silo like the trunk of a giant tree, connecting every level with perfect symmetry. Why design something so monumental? Function alone doesn't explain it. The staircase is the one structure every resident must acknowledge every single day. Whether you're an engineer, a doctor, a farmer, or the head of IT, your life literally revolves around it. That's not practical design. That's symbolic design. Look at what the show is actually telling us. Every civilization builds monuments that reflect its beliefs. Castles reflected kings. Temples reflected faith. Courthouses reflected justice. The silo's greatest monument is a staircase. That means movement itself is part of the ideology. The founders wanted every resident to experience the same ritual.
Climb.
Descend.
Repeat.
Every day. Every year. Every generation. Eventually the staircase becomes invisible. People stop questioning it. They simply accept that life is hard. But that's exactly how systems of control become permanent. Not through force. Through habit. This is the detail everyone missed. The staircase doesn't just shape where people go. It shapes how they think. If every important destination requires pain, people slowly begin believing that pain is normal. If every answer demands an exhausting climb, they begin asking fewer questions. If every visit to another level takes half a day, they slowly stop caring about people who live there. Isolation becomes culture. Distance becomes identity. And authority never has to order any of it. The architecture does the work. Now think about Juliette again. Why does she feel so different from everyone else? It's not only because she's intelligent. It's because she refuses to let the staircase define her. Most people accept the invisible borders between levels. Juliette ignores them. She keeps crossing lines that everyone else treats as permanent. That's why she's dangerous. Not because she has all the answers. Because she refuses to stay inside one version of the truth. Bernard understands this long before anyone else does. Notice how often he speaks about order instead of truth. That's important. Truth can be debated. Order cannot. Everything Bernard protects is built around keeping the silo functioning exactly as designed. He knows that if people stop respecting the invisible boundaries, the entire structure begins to fail. Maybe that's why he seems less afraid of secrets than of curiosity. Curiosity spreads. Questions spread. Movement spreads. And every journey up or down the staircase becomes another crack in the system. Now, let's connect every piece of evidence. The staircase slows communication. It separates communities. It reinforces hierarchy. It exhausts investigators. It discourages curiosity. It delays rebellion. It isolates knowledge. It turns authority into geography. None of those effects require guards. None require violence. The building itself performs the control. That's too many coincidences to ignore. And here's the terrifying conclusion. The founders may have understood something about human psychology that most people never realize. You don't need walls to create a prison. You only need people to believe that crossing invisible boundaries isn't worth the effort. The staircase becomes the perfect prison because it looks like freedom. Everyone is technically allowed to climb. Almost nobody truly does. That's the illusion. Freedom exists. Access exists. Choice exists. But the cost is carefully calculated to keep most people exactly where they are. And once that idea settles into your mind, the silo looks completely different. The endless spiral isn't just a background set. It's the real ruler of the city. Every decision begins there. Every secret passes through it. Every revolution rises on it. Every failure falls down it. The staircase isn't leading people toward the truth. It's deciding who is capable of reaching it. But there's one final clue that refuses to disappear. Throughout the series, the camera repeatedly lingers on the staircase far longer than necessary. Sometimes after conversation ends. Sometimes before an important revelation. Sometimes when no one is speaking at all. Almost as if the show wants us to keep looking at it. Not because of who is walking, but because of what they're walking on. That can't be accidental. Shows like Silo rarely waste visual attention. If the staircase keeps demanding our focus, it's probably because it still has a story left to tell. And if Season 3 finally reveals another layer of the Founders' plan, don't be surprised if the biggest twist isn't hidden behind a vault door or outside the silo, but beneath the very steps that every resident has climbed thousands of times without ever wondering what might be underneath them. Because if the staircase was designed to control every generation, Who built the mechanism that controls the staircase itself? And what happens the day someone finally reaches the place those stairs were never supposed to lead?